back when I was really just starting to get into more and more off-road trips, building out a gear kit with everything I needed was kind of overwhelming, I'm not gonna lie. But here's the thing, once you have your own build, you slowly start to figure out what you need. Now sometimes that's from picking up what your friends bring on the trail, and other times it's just realizing, yeah, I should have probably packed that. In my OG Tacoma, I have a decked drawer system, and that thing's been really nice because I have it neatly packed with all my gear, years of slowly collecting things that I would need during trips, to the point where eventually I would take that truck out and realize I don't need to really pack anything. I've got everything I need. But with my newer 2024 Tacoma that wasn't built out yet, and I wanted to take on a 3-day, 2-night wheeling trip, which I did and was super awesome, beforehand, when I was trying to figure out what to pack, it was actually kind of difficult. I was starting from scratch. So that gave me an idea to make an updated video about all of the practical off-road gear that I like, because a lot of people ask me questions about what gear I actually use and actually need on the trails. So I wanted to make something more approachable, maybe if you're just figuring it out, maybe if you're prepping for your first longer off-road trip, or maybe you're just like staring at your empty gear bin like, where do I even start? Because honestly, that's kind of how I felt about this truck when I recently took it out. And also, since gear can get pretty expensive pretty quickly, I kind of wanted to share where I personally think you can kind of save a little bit more and when the time is to spend more. And by spending, I don't always mean expensive, just, you know, choosing gear that won't fail you. Sort of like a buy once, cry once sort of deal. Okay, first up, tire pressure. If you are going to go off-roading, I highly suggest you deflate or remove air from your tires. Now, basically what this is going to do is it's going to increase your contact patch. That's both in the width direction and then also like in the diameter direction, if that makes any sense. That's gonna give you more traction, and I'm not gonna get too technical about the reasons in this specific video, but there are videos you can look up of people going over the same obstacle at like 30 PSI and then like 20 and then 18, 15, and you can see how much better things get. So to actually remove air from my tires, I have done a variety of different things, all the way down from the bare bones when I've had like nothing and needed to air down before with like my fingernail. Now, I highly suggest not doing that because it is going to take forever, it's going to hurt your hands. So what I suggest is actually purchasing a dedicated deflator. Now, what I have had for years and what I've really liked is this, the ARB EZ deflator. I would say this is probably on the higher end of tire deflators. It's like in the $50 to $60 price range, but I like it because it's got a manual gauge over here, and it also completely removes the valve stem, so airing down happens really quickly. But there are definitely some more in between and budget options to achieve removing air from your tires efficiently and quickly. A lot of my friends really like and live by using these spring-loaded screw-on ones. They remove air pretty efficiently. I think some of those ones are pretty budget friendly, but yeah, just in general, I recommend having a dedicated deflator. Doesn't have to be this one, although it is really great in my opinion. If you're going to deflate, you probably should have some way to put air back in your tires. Now, of course, you can go to the gas station when you're done wheeling, but sometimes you do not have that at your disposal. So having an air compressor really so many times, you guys, for me, has come in clutch. I like to recommend a compressor or some sort of digital tire inflator even more than a deflator, because think about it, you can use it beyond the trails. I've used my onboard air compressor at work before for other people that have slow leaks, for when I've had slow leaks. Obviously, I'm using it to air back up. I have always liked ARB air compressors. I have used a single one before, and I also recently just built out a twin ARB compressor contained in a decked deco box. I've actually really been enjoying that solution versus having onboard air, because on my last wheeling trip, when we had multiple vehicles, it was nice being able to move the box around to air up all the different trucks. ARB, and I'm sure other companies that make air compressors like Viair, they have their own box kits that you can buy. But if you're just getting started from the get-go, I realize air compressors, especially the ARB ones, can be pretty pricey. So I actually started with just like a Makita digital tire inflator. I liked it because all my other tools are Makita, so I already had the batteries for it. It was small, easy to carry. The only thing is if you have to air up a lot, it It does take a long time. I do have this one core memory. Well, it's not really like a core memory. It's kind of a bad memory if I'm going to be honest, of me using that digital Makita inflator in Big Bear during wintertime. It was cold, so my tire pressure was really, really low. And we were just getting back from doing Gold Mountain, I think. And yeah, I was just sitting there with like my hands numb, trying to air up my tires for like half an hour, and it was really miserable. So yeah, that's the day I actually went with an ARB single air compressor, and it's been happy days since then. But at the same time, yes, that little small inflator did get the job done. Going along the theme of tires, if you can't tell, I'm a big believer that having the adequate tools for your tires is very, very important for these off-road trips. Just my personal experience, having a tire plug kit, which basically includes a reamer, which is something like this. And then I think this is called a split eye tool. And then also the plugs and rubber cement is very, very helpful. You can look up lots of YouTube videos on how to plug a tire. I think I even have one here on my channel, or a short showing you guys how to do it. But if you're in a situation where you can plug a tire on the trail, a lot of times that is my personal preference, because that's a lot nicer than going and getting the spare, changing out the tire, which you need to get the jack out for anyways. So I recommend picking up one of these, and certainly having a more budget-friendly kit is better than not having one at all. I don't know where this specific kit is from, but what I want you guys to look at if you are looking at buying these is getting ones with metal handles, because in my experience, when you plug a tire, you are really pushing in there. It's a huge arm workout. And I actually have another kit over here. You can see I've half opened it. I've actually used some of the plugs from it, but not the actual tools itself, because if you notice, the tools have kind of the plastic handles, and it's just really hard when a tool isn't sturdy to get enough leverage to really ream out a puncture and put a plug in. So I much prefer something a little bit more sturdy, something with metal handles. The next thing I want to share with you guys is actually the sponsor of today's video, but seriously, even before they sponsored my channel, I have been using this on my off-road trips and I've absolutely loved it. I would feel horrible including it in this video, or really on my channel at all, if I didn't think it was useful, but I do think it's very appropriate in this video. It is the Onyx Off-Road app, and the best thing about it is it's kind of like multiple different things all in one. You're getting a GPS trail map, trail ratings, pictures of the trail, the current conditions, the weather, downloadable offline maps, which was really, really useful during my recent trip to Utah. Also custom waypoints, which, by the way, has been the method I've been able to actually share specific coordinates of cool spots, cool trails with you guys, all in a really nice, easy to use ecosystem. You can use it on your computer, but when I'm actually out wheeling, I have it on an app here on my phone, but it integrates really nicely if you have CarPlay or Android Auto. I truly have been using this app long before Onyx actually reached out to work with me, which now I think is really, really cool that I have the opportunity to do this and share it with you guys. So as always, Onyx is offering you guys a 20% discount code by either using the link in the description or my code. I do think it's a good value, even if you just use it for one wheeling trip. And like I said, Onyx Off-Road is the way I share with you guys all my favorite waypoints, tracks, and cool places that I visit so that you can too. Moving on, I think a shovel is one of the most underrated, best off-road recovery tools that you guys can carry. Here's the one I have. It's a foldable Smitty-built one. This is all it is. You can see I've got a lot of use out of it. There are times I wish I had a longer shovel with me, but nonetheless, having one at all is very, very crucial in my opinion. I've used it to dig out a stuck tire, clearing sand from underneath the diff, and even leveling ground to set up camp. And as you guys saw, this thing has a relatively small form factor, doesn't take up a lot of packing space, and you don't have to really get too fancy, but just having one is really useful. And along the lines of recovery, I think carrying traction boards is a really, really good idea. Now, unlike the shovel that you guys just saw, these do have a much larger footprint, but they could be very, very useful. So I've had 2 different sets of traction boards in my most recent years. One more budget-friendly one I was starting out with, and then this set over here, which are kind of top tier MaxTrax ones. Now, are there any differences? I would say some of the more budget-friendly ones have plastic that can warp, more easily snap, although that's honestly never been my issue using them. But that's a reason a lot of people like to just right off the bat purchase MaxTrax or like the ARB Trev ones. Also, those ones have replaceable teeth in a lot of cases. I actually have to do that on this set of MaxTrax. I have a couple teeth missing on one of the traction boards. But in general, they do come in clutch, especially for somebody like me who's off-roading in a desert, sandy environment a lot of times. I would say if you're just getting started, probably going the budget-friendly route is not a bad idea. It's better than having nothing. But if you do plan to go out a lot and use them a lot, definitely go with MaxTrax, ARB Tread. There's a lot of other good brands out there as well. That being said, there's no point in having traction boards if you can't get tugged out of a hole. So a tow strap is great, and unlike a winch, you don't need power, but you do need another vehicle and a solid anchor point. There was one trip this season where I totally forgot my tow strap. I left it in my Land Cruiser and I was taking out one of my Tacomas, and we encountered some kids who needed some help recovering one of their vehicles. It would have been much faster to do that recovery with the tow strap had I had it, but it just meant we had to spend extra effort and extra hours digging them out instead. I will say you probably don't need the fanciest kinetic rope day one, but you definitely don't want a cheap strap that will just snap under tension. So spend your money on something rated with proper stitching. Don't cut corners in that respect. The next one I want to show you is a little bit less off-road oriented and more on the camping, overlanding, and I suppose survival side of things, but it's actually right here. You guys definitely probably recognize this. This is just a humble Swiss Army knife. I don't know if it's the climber. I know there's lots of different editions. This is my main one, and it's one without the saw, but it's got 2 knives on it. Obviously, what is this useful for? Well, you can cut different things like paracord. I actually don't know if this one of mine has the screwdriver. Doesn't look like it, but if you get one with a screwdriver, that can also be very useful. So multi-tools are great, but what I've actually done with mine here specifically is I have modified it. Where the toothpick is actually something called a fire ant striker. And where the corkscrew is, you can actually fit some helix-shaped tinder, which is what this orange thing is. Now, I actually used a little bit of this stuff up, but what it is it's basically waterproof. It also floats. It's bright orange so you can see it, but you can expand it out and actually use it as fire starter along with your striker and a sharp edge like the back of a saw, or if you're really in a pinch, your knife, although you want to limit that because obviously that's going to start to dull the knife. On my last trip, I know I packed a lighter, but I could not find it for the life of me. So this was actually really useful for starting a little spark and a little fire for cooking our food. I actually learned about this from a little survival class from Toyota, and yeah, just thought this could be useful, or to people who like modifying their gear like I do. Maybe this was cool. Now, moving on to the biggest item, the physically, I think, biggest item, an off-road jack. Now, I know I'm gonna get comments about the usefulness of carrying or lugging around a big, heavy jack every time you go on an off-road trip versus the profile of, say, like a high-lift jack or maybe a bottle jack. I will say, yes, it is very heavy. I feel like I'm getting a giant arm workout every time I'm using mine, but it has come really in handy for me. Even on my last trip, I ended up using it twice in one day. First on this truck to realign it, if you guys saw that video, because I bent one of my cam tabs. And then later that day, we ran into a RAV4 that had gone over some rocks, and we used it to lift up the vehicle to clear out those rocks. I don't know, I feel like I'm just using that jack like every other trip or something. Anyways, it is a Pro Eagle jack, and what's special about it versus other floor jacks that you may find in the garage is obviously it's got these big giant wheels, so it's got pretty good ground clearance, and it's also got a skid plate at the bottom. And what I like is that I have a couple of different extensions for it, which is great if you have a lifted vehicle you're working with, but also sometimes when you're working with something a little bit lower, you could just take off that extension. Now this certainly was a very expensive purchase, although I certainly think I got my money's worth out of mine because I also use it in my garage for all my installs and everything. Harbor Freight does make kind of a competing version that I personally haven't had, but I've heard really good things about. That one's less expensive, but my Pro Eagle has been pretty awesome to me for the last couple years, so I haven't had any reason to switch it out. Next up, I haven't even talked about this yet, but basically it is a kit filled with a bunch of different hand tools, and I would definitely recommend carrying a couple different hand tools with you. It doesn't have to be all inclusive, but sometimes when you need a tool, it is nice when you have it. So that could be like a basic socket wrench set. I would recommend, if you have a Toyota, getting a metric one. Maybe also a screwdriver and a flathead. What is really useful is having one of those adjustable wrenches. Oh, also, and pliers. I would get a set of needle nose and also regular ones. You know, for those times where you're maybe pulling a cotter pin or you need to crimp something down. And these tools don't have to by any means be super expensive. Like, we don't need Snap-on necessarily, especially if this is just going to be in your recovery kit and travel kit. Harbor Freight is great. I really like Boxo tools too. I think they're a good middle of the road brand and option. The last item we're gonna talk about is having a good set of gloves. I think these are a huge necessity. If you're using any one of the tools that I mentioned earlier in this video, typically you'll want to be wearing a pair of work gloves, especially if you're outside. Yes, obviously things are dirty, but it's more than just keeping your hands clean or protecting them from getting dirty. There's obviously sharp objects, and a lot of times what you don't think about at first is things get very, very hot. Obviously from the sun and from the environment and maybe even the engine as well. But I don't know if you guys have like put your hand near one of your shocks after it's gone through like a lot of compression in a short amount of time. Shocks heat up really, really quickly, especially when you have small bodied ones. So yeah, for things like that, wear gloves. And I have my own pair of dedicated garage gloves that I like to use here in the garage, but these ones are my trail gloves. There are a lot of great gloves out there. You don't have to go crazy and spend a ton of money, in my opinion. If you're using them a lot, they're probably gonna wear out anyways. So yeah, I kind of go middle of the road. These are mechanics ones that I replace maybe one every 2 years, just because like they'll start getting holes. But what I like about them and what I think is most important in finding a work glove is getting ones that fit properly. Oh my God, it's so annoying when I have gloves that are either too small, so they're really uncomfortable, or so large that they're like getting snagged on everything while I'm working. It's such a hindrance. I just repeat buy these gloves, not because I think they're like an amazing pair of gloves that will last forever, but just because I know they fit my hands really well. So that is all the off-road gear that I have to share today with you guys. Again, this isn't a full comprehensive list of what you guys should pack before you go off-roading, but just hopefully an approachable where to start with off-road gear, where to spend, where to save, and what I've actually used. As always, please leave your recommendation and anything I've missed in the comment section down below because it helps out other people. Thank you again to Onyx Off-Road for sponsoring today's video and being an awesome off-road tool. But thank you so much for watching. If you want to connect more with me, you can follow me on my Instagram. It is @ChloeKuoTaco. I'm posting more in real time on there. But other than that, I hope I'll see you in the next video. Bye guys.